Hello and welcome to the Penalty Box Perspective podcast. My name is Nathaniel and I'm joined by my good friend Matt. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm really good, thank you, mate. Yeah, good to have you back. It was really daunting recording a podcast on my own, but we got through it. But yeah, definitely good to have you back in the room.
Yeah, I'll be glad to keep you in check and stop your little wild opinions getting thrown out there. Uh, Challenge you back on that. No, it's good. It's good to be back. Sorry I missed that last episode. It was actually a subject I really wanted to talk about, but I'm sure we'll address the Olympics further down the line as well. But no, excited to talk about this week's set of games. But shall we start off with some news?
Yeah, absolutely. We got a couple of contracts again. Yeah, some more contracts signed around the league. One of the kind of large remaining forwards who was sort of yet to sign up. It was due to be a UFA at the end of the season. Adrian Kempe of the LA Kings. He signed a new 8-year deal at $10.625 million. Which I think when you look around the sort of going rate for some of those players, it seems like he's maybe taken a bit of a discount. But I think certainly looking forward, I think that's a decent cap hit for LA.
Yeah, I think it's about right. I mean, it's annoyingly not level. Why don't they just do like 10, 10.25, 10.5, 10.75, and 11? I don't know why they have to do the 10.625, but yeah, I think it's a very good contract for the Kings. Obviously, solid player, going to be around that franchise for a long time now. But yeah, and I think it came at a good time for the Kings. They've had a good week. No spoilers with that, but yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right, and especially with Kopitar going as well. I know we've mentioned in previous episodes that don't really think Kempe's a guy they could afford to lose, because otherwise that's going to be two sort of massive players from their lineup that are gone. So I think in that regard, 10.625, they'll be happy. He'll be happy. He gets the stability and that will probably be, the last big contract of his career. And he's making his money. So power to him. Um, we had a second one signed, and talk about someone signing the contract when they're playing well, secure that immediate bag. Shane Pinto, he signs for 4 by 7.5 million in Ottawa. Um, I know they were looking at potentially an 8 million. Sorry, not an 8 million. Sorry, an 8-year deal. But they managed to land somewhere in the middle on a 4-year that gives him 2 years of unrestricted free agency at the end of that deal. So he'll be a UFA in 4 years after the end of this year. But 7.5, Shane Pinto, decent deal for Ottawa, do you think?
Yeah, I think it's good. I mean, it ties him down with the other centres that they have, Stutzler, Cousins, etc., down for the sort of same time period. So they got like the same cycle going on, which is probably why they fit it in like that. But I think that's a great contract. Like before this off season, Pinto wasn't going to get anywhere near 7.5 million a year. Plus, he had a great start to the year, and it's just like you mentioned this before the podcast. I always getting mixed up. Is it Schwartz for Seattle, who's started off really well, and we've kept talking about him like get your deal done, get it signed while you're hot, and that's exactly what Pinto's done, and I think that's excellent. I think for Pinto, I think in for Ottawa, I don't think that's a good contract for them. To be fair,
Yeah. And even just then, you've got the two mixed up again. Not Jaden Schwartz of Seattle, but Nick Schmaltz of the Mammoth. It happens every single time.
every time I can't
Every
get my head
time.
around it.
Yeah, they're Schwartz and Schmaltz. But yeah, Nick Schmaltz is another guy due a new contract, I believe. So I think with Pinto signing up, I think he'll be keen to get something sorted whilst he's still playing pretty well, whilst the Mammoth are playing pretty well. It wouldn't surprise me if that was something that kind of got done before Christmas, and certainly before the Olympic break. But yes, so Adrian Kempe, Shane Pinto re-signed off the market for free agency in the summer. I think for the next few years, I think free agency is going to be a very drab affair. You know, the cap's going up and everyone's going to have so much more money to play around with. I just think those big high ticket free agents just aren't going to happen for the next few years until the cap sort of stables back out a bit again.
Yeah, we might see more. sort of blockbuster trades instead, sort of sign and trade kind of deals. It's probably where you might look at the big sort of shake-ups in the league. I'm thinking sort of the Rantanen saga last year. Obviously, you got McDavid and stuff coming up, and depending on how Edmonton do at the end of this year, you could sort of see stuff there, like Quinn Hughes, etc., in Vancouver, like things like that, where players are under contract for the most part, but still got rumours of them moving. So it might be a case of a sign and trade kind of situation rather than free agency, as it were.
Yeah, I think
Which
so.
isn't
I
too
think
bad.
teams just aren't going to want to lose their top guys for nothing, and I still think Jordan Kyrou. I still think Jason Robertson. Again, Robertson's someone who needs a contract at the end of the year. It wouldn't surprise me if we potentially saw a sign and trade for Jason Robertson to leave Dallas. Just because they're out of money and not going to necessarily maybe have the space to fit him in. But NHL teams are crafty, and I'm sure if there's any way they can keep him, they will try and find a way. But anyway, that's conversation for further down the road. I think certainly when we get towards the trade deadline.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were going to cover some injuries in this news section as well, because it's some big injury news. But there's that many. I think we're best off just going team by team. I think is been quite the week for injuries this week, unfortunately.
Yeah, never good to see. You don't want to see players missing time, etc. And sometimes you just have a week, don't you, where players just seem to drop like flies. But yeah, we'll get them covered as we go from team to team. But we'll dive into it.
And we're now going to return back to the best division in hockey after a week talk about the Ducks first off the bat. But we're going to go to the Central Division and the NHL leading Colorado Avalanche, who obviously fifth in our power rankings at the moment, but I think they're going to shoot up even from that spot when we do our power rankings later this week. But with 29 points, they had 3 games this week, won all 3, and all 3 were fairly just straight up. They beat the Ducks 4-1, Sabres 6-3, and Islanders 4-1. So yeah, what do you think about Colorado this week?
Yeah, I think obviously you picked them. They were your cup pick at the start of the year. That's a really good looking pick for you at the moment. Yeah, they've been absolutely unbelievable. Nathan McKinnon, 33 points in 19 games. I mean, I'm not sure how that projects out. I'm not that good at mental maths, but over an 82 game season, if he plays this way the whole year, he could end up with like 130 plus points, which would just be absolutely ridiculous. But not only that, he's got 14 goals and 19 assists, so it's not just like tilted one way or the other. But he's absolutely crushing it. You've still got Natchez with 25 points in 19 games, 25 points in 19 games for Cale Makar as well. And they're getting some absolutely fantastic goaltending still. Again, we've touched on Colorado's double wood before, but yeah, Wedgwood and Blackwood are just absolutely smashing it at the moment. And it seems at the moment that Colorado are just an absolute wrecking ball and just taking teams apart. So yeah, they're still top of the Central, and I think that's the way it's potentially gonna look for the foreseeable.
Yeah, it's just the record's just outstanding. Like even when they play close games, they don't often lose. They've only lost 1 in regulation so far this year in 19 games. Lost 5 in overtime, but more in penalties, etc. That's by the by. But the fact is, they've got points from all but 1 game of the season so far. They're on a plus 31 in 19 games. So they even when they're losing, whatever, it's just a great team, really. And they go at home against the Rangers, and then they go on an away trip to the Predators and then your Blackhawks. I mean, I can easily see another 3 wins out of those games and them just steamrolling, keeping on going.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. Taking my Blackhawks cap off for a second, yeah, I think those are 3 games that they can absolutely go and win. And like you said, with 1 regulation loss this season, they're just absolutely phenomenal. Yeah, I just see them carrying on, to be honest.
No injuries really to speak of for the most part. None of all their top units are there. They got Lehkonen almost at a point a game as well. It's just consistent. Their best players are just playing out of their minds. And yeah, my pick is certainly looking good. Knowing that they'll go out in the first round of the playoffs. But anyway, we'll talk about that later down the line. Um, Now, though I'm celebrating my cleverness with the Colorado Avalanche, I'm also going to bite the bullet and say that I may have made a mistake in this second team because they've also had a fantastic week. So Dallas Stars, who have seemingly shaken off a bit of funk that they had at the start of the year, and are now steamrolling their way through as well. So they've had 3 games, they won all 3, albeit one in overtime. Sat on 27 points in the Central, but I think there's one obvious game that we can talk about for the Dallas Stars week this week.
Yeah, that 7-0 win against the Montreal Canadiens was just absolutely dominant. Teams have good nights, teams have off nights. The Canadiens have been absolutely terrific this season. They've been one of the must-see teams in the league. Dallas have just absolutely taken them to the cleaners on their home ice as well. So they've gone into Montreal and just absolutely, bulldozed them out the room. Jason Robertson's had a terrific week in those 3 games. He's got 6 goals and 3 assists. So, just casually scoring 3 points a game on average in those games. Casey DeSmith with a shutout in that Montreal game as well. But then, an overtime win against the Senators 3-2, and then beat the Philadelphia Flyers 5-1. They are just being absolutely terrific. You've got Rantanen on 26 points in 19 for the season, Robertson on 23 points in 19 for the season. We talked about that, the potential of Jason Robertson, potentially ending up being the odd guy out. If they do reach a point where they feel that, that they are going to have to trade Jason Robertson, they're going to get a very, very healthy return for in that trade and be able to sort of restock their cupboards as far as picks and prospects go. But what have been your thoughts on the Stars? I've I know it's been a bit of a change of heart for you. I think from the start of the season, I don't think you were that high on them initially, but they're certainly looking. Would it not be for the Colorado Avalanche, they'd be almost running away with it in this division.
Yeah, I mean, my heart stayed the same. I still hate the Stars, but my head has probably changed and think, well, actually, the coaching change may not be as impactful as it may suggest it to be. I mean, it's a long season. We're almost at the quarter mark now, but they are moving forward at an alarming rate. So I think I will have to eat my words and change how I think this team are set up. But even Ottinger's doing well. The Smith's doing well. They're both on a above 900 save percentage on the season so far. They both had a shutout each. They got games against the Islanders, Canucks, and Flames, and they probably got an easier lineup than the Avalanche doing it in this week coming up. So, yeah, the Central, what is probably the best division in hockey in terms of like the teams involved, it may become less interesting in terms of playoff spots if these two just keep dragging on and beating everybody else.
Yeah, potentially. It may well just be that the one playoff spot stands open, but there is currently a team up into that 3rd playoff spot at the moment, and we'll move into them.
Yeah, one thing just on Dallas, I know mainly because my fantasy team, Harley's has been playing with an injury and has now sort of been knocked out for an unknown amount of time with that injury. So that's the only sort of tidbit I wanted to put in there. And he's adding to my injury list woes in my fantasy team in a minute.
Yeah, I was going to say you're missing a hell of a lot of players at the moment. But yeah, that is a loss for them. I did have Thomas Harley, projected on my Team Canada roster. From the last episode. Hopefully he can get back fit. And if it's an unknown amount of time, hopefully it's not too long. But yeah, hopefully he can get back in amongst it, and I'm sure when it comes around, I think it's the 31st of December that the teams have to submit their rosters by. Hopefully his name will be on that list.
Yeah, absolutely. We will then move into the 3rd team in the Central, which normal order restored in comparison from last year. I think the Winnipeg Jets have moved up a spot. Sat 5 points behind Dallas on 22 points, a record of 11, 7, and 0. But yeah, the Winnipeg Jets, what do you think of their week?
Yeah, well, they've got 3 points from 3 games. They beat the Canucks 5-3. They lost to the Kraken 5-3, and then beat the Flames in a shootout. So they've all been road games, and Seattle they've been a bit of a surprise package. I think maybe they've won some games this year where it wouldn't have maybe been expected of them. But Josh Morrissey's had a terrific week. He's got 6 points in those 3 games, a goal and 5 assists. Kyle Connor's got a goal and 3 assists in there as well as. And Mark Scheifele and Iafalo as well, both got 2 goals and an assist. So they're getting some good, point production. Some good games from Connor Hellebuck in the Vancouver and Calgary game, but maybe not as much in that Seattle game. But again, I do think it's I do think Winnipeg do need to start rotating Connor Hellebuck a little bit more. He's started 14 games on the season, whilst Comrie's only started 4. So I do think they need to they just need to avoid sort of gassing him out too much before the playoffs. I'm not saying that it needs to be a 50-50 split, but when you're playing 3 games in 5 days, you would maybe expect Comrie to have started that middle one against Seattle, maybe. But yeah, what about you?
It's not like he's doing
thoughts?
poorly either.
No, he's
not
performing
like
as you would
Comrie's doing bad.
expect. No, like Hellebuck's performing as you'd expect. Comrie's done well when he's come in as well. He's got a 275 goals against average and a 908 save percentage. So, he's someone that they can trust. He's done well when it's been asked of him. So I think you've got him there. Just use him a bit more. But the Jets return back home anyway for a 3-game stretch. They've got the Blue Jackets, the Hurricanes, and the Wild coming up. Definitely some a winnable game there against the Blue Jackets. I think the Hurricanes and Wild won't be easy games. I think Minnesota have kind of picked up a little bit. Obviously Carolina have been great all year so far as well. So they will be hoping. Has Adam Lowry made his way back into the team yet? Is he back now, or I know he had that hip problem, didn't he? But
yeah.
I'm not sure. No, it's fine. We're on it. Okay, yeah, underwent hip surgery.
I think he is back.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it certainly seems that way, which will be a good return for them. I haven't really caught much of the Jets this week, so I wasn't sure if he was back in the team or not. But yeah, I think they're back up to that 3rd spot. It's going to be a battle for that 3rd playoff spot, I think. But yeah, good week for the Jets, I think. Reasonable.
Yeah.
3 points, 3 games. They'll take it.
I still think they're a great team. I still think they're a good team. I think they'll be there or thereabouts the end of the year. Obviously, they're not going to be out leading the league like they were last year, but that's a difficult level to sustain, and it might actually be a better way of moving forward. But yeah, I think the main thing for the Jets is to keep switching up the keepers a bit more, keep Hellebuck fresh. But yeah. Without further ado, we'll move into 4th place then of the Central, down a spot this week, still on 22 points, but just due to sort of games played and games won in regulation, the Chicago Blackhawks have dropped 1. Now, they only played 2 games this week. They overtime lost to the Devils, which I think was a very good close game, that one, and then came out and beat the Maple Leafs 3-2. So I'm sure you'll have watched your Blackhawks play. What can you say about them?
Yeah, so the overtime loss against the Devils, I know a few of the players had some comments after the game saying that they felt a bit heavy in their legs, etc. And that's not a conditioning issue. But it was their first game back at home after I think they'd played 6 games on the road prior to that. So, it's been a lot of travel. They've been, spending a lot of time flying from place to place and, not necessarily being at home and being in hotel rooms. And I think, the Devils just, it's a really tough team to play. New Jersey have been fantastic. And I think with the way that the Chicago team is built, they're a very fast team. They've got a lot of speed in transition and especially on the breakaway as well. But so they've been able to use that against most teams this season. But, New Jersey are as fast, if not a faster team. I think they just came slightly unstuck against it. But, I would not have expected to come away with a point from that game. So I'll take that. The game against the Maple Leafs, not a perfect performance, but they got it done. Louis Crevier's had a great week. He's got 3 assists, and for a former 7th-round pick to be in a position in the Chicago lineup where he's more or less undroppable. 6'8", massive guy. He's had a great a great week, and Jeff Blashill, the coach, absolutely loves him.
Great name as well for a 6'8" monster in it, Crevier. I don't know.
He's just a monster. He's just a monster.
Sounds like a monster.
Was a slight disappointment in that Toronto game to see Nick Foligno took a puck off the hand, immediately went to the dressing room, and Jeff Blashill said afterwards that he expects Foligno's going to be out for around about 4 weeks with a hand injury. Sounds like maybe a break, which is really unfortunate, and Foligno will be a miss from the leadership capacity, and as well as what he brings to that fourth line. So that's a bit of a loss, but I think they've got Jason Dickinson returning to the lineup, so that'll be good for them. Sort of 1 in, 1 out.
Yeah, I'm still happy for you and this team. I think it's continuing to make steps up and consistently performing and getting results in. So I think a good week for the Blackhawks all in all, really. 3 points from 2 games, you can't complain. Obviously they've dropped in the standings, but that's probably because of the lack of games played this week, and that's about it. Obviously Bedard hasn't had a spectacular week, but then again, you're not going to be spectacular every single game. So it's not like he's rubbish now. But it's weird not to see his name at the top of the scorers in the weekly standings for the Blackhawks.
But his 8-game point streak came to an end against Toronto. They did have him out for the empty net goal, but he just wasn't able to pop it in. But yeah, he's still got 26 points on 18 games this season. So really outstanding from him. Been really impressed.
Yeah, he got a fairly up and down upcoming games. You game against the Flames at home, then the Kraken at home, then travelling to Buffalo, and then at home against the Avalanche. So, I'll be happy with 4 out of those 8. I think maybe get 5. That'd be great.
Yeah, I think 4 or 5 points from those 8 available, I think would be another good week, and would certainly keep the conversation interesting about the direction of this team. But it's interesting as we sort of move into the next team. You've got one team in Chicago on 22 points, who I think are sort of vastly overachieving, and everyone's sort of taking notice of them. You've then got your Minnesota Wild also on 22 points on the season, who I think everyone's a bit down on, which just goes to highlight the sort of levels of expectations that teams have. But I'll let you lead us off with Minnesota, Nathaniel.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a fascinating middle part of the group here. Obviously, Winnipeg's on 22 as well, and then the team after the Wild, the Utah Mammoth, are on 21. So it's a very close in that, and each team kind of has its own expectations. So it is very interesting, like you say. Now, we did a podcast a week or so ago with Seth Tupel from Locked On Wild, and we had a bit of a rant and rave about Minnesota Wild aren't doing what they should be doing, considering the future of John Hines, etc. What can change, and we're really being extremely pessimistic about the team. And then since then, in true sort of commentators' curse fashion, we've sort of turned it around a little bit. So, yeah, we played a few more games than other people, which is why we're sort of the bottom end of the 22 points thing. But we lost to the Sharks in overtime, which, with how they've been playing recently, is I guess we should have won that game, but at least we've got a point. Then we beat the Ducks 2-0, shut out home, and then we beat the Golden Knights last night. So I think this team has turned it around, and I do think it's with the return of Matt Zuccarello, who just seems to be the gel that helps this team sort of form. Like, he's such a good playmaker, little passes here and there, setting up Kaprizov and Baldy and everyone else. I think he's been sort of the key part to turn this around, I think.
I would completely agree. And I know he's been someone who, throughout the whole season, you've mentioned that, they need Zuccarello back in that lineup, and he's come back in. He's had a great week, 3 assists on the week. And like you said, he just seems to be, he's such a good two-way player. and it really is just he's someone who you can use in all situations. Obviously he's come back into the lineup and been really effective. So he's been excuse me, sorry, he's been great. Another great week for Matt Boldy as well. I think Matt Boldy's another guy who, again from last episode, I think Matt Boldy will be getting an Olympic call up. I would be surprised if he didn't. But I love Matt Boldy. I think he's such a good player. Good
All
week for me.
round good player.
Yeah, just can do a bit of everything, and he's got power, and he's got strength and speed, and he can finish and he can create, and he's a really 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 talented forward, and someone who fits into that Minnesota lineup really really well. They got the Hurricanes, the Penguins, and the Jets coming up, so not an easy slate for Minnesota in the next three. But with the way they've been playing recently, I certainly think that there could be 3 points on offer for them there potentially, or even more. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I think one of the main criticisms that I had for the Wild was that we seem to be getting bullied a lot. That we're like dumping the puck in, hoping to get them on the forecheck, and then just getting smashed all over the place, and we're kind of sort of frail defensively. But there's been a massive shift in that. We're not conceding many goals at all, and Wallstead is playing out of his mind. And I mean, I'm starting to think whether it was the right thing giving Gustafsson the contract when we got Wallstead in coming up behind. I mean, he's had 2 shutouts in 6 games, 4 wins with a 2.1 goal against average and 924 save percentage. He's been absolutely outstanding when he's been out there. So I think with that stronger defensively in mind, we got Zuccarello flinging the puck around. I mean, I'm not going to do a full 180 and go from completely pessimistic to being a hopeless optimist for the Wild, but I do think we're now starting to pick up and play the hockey that we can play, and maybe it's a good time to come into this 3-game stretch. Am I going to say we're going to come out with 3 wins? Absolutely not. But I'm not looking at these games coming up and thinking, right, we're going to be completely out of this, especially when it's so tight for that 3rd playoff spot. I'm excited to go up against your Blackhawks this year to see how we end up.
Yeah, that'll be a good game. I agree with yourself. Like, it's not a complete 180. They haven't just solved all the problems overnight, but they're certainly they're tilting back in the right direction. The arrow's pointing upwards, and for them, they'll just be hoping they can keep that going, avoid any more injuries, and keep the big players being productive where they can.
Yeah, absolutely right. We'll move on to the 6th place team then. I've already sort of spoilt it there for people potentially, but the Utah Mammoth on 21 points. They've down a spot. Now they keep seemingly spiralling. But when you look at the record, they're still 10-7-1. They've played 2 games this week, beat the Sabres 5-2 and lost in overtime to the Islanders 3-2, but still they find themselves dropping down to 6th. But yeah, well, what do you think about the Utah Mammoth?
Yeah, it just goes to highlight again how good this division is, that they find themselves in 6th place on 21 points. But a bit of a tricky week to sort of quantify where Utah are, because the Sabres and the Islanders sort of aren't great sides. You probably would have expected them to have beaten the Sabres, which they did. And then losing in overtime to the Islanders, they've still come away with a point. Maybe not what they would have. They probably would have preferred the extra one. I just think Vemelka's he's just not been that great. But I think it brings it onto a slightly sort of broader conversation. So Vemelka's got a 284 goals against average, as well as an 883 save percentage. But I do think when you look up and down the league, save percentages for goaltenders does seem to be down a little bit this year. I mean, we always talk about sort of the magic 900 number, but I think it is, whether that's been a case of the shots have been better, or maybe we're just at a stage at the moment where some players are playing sort of in and above their station, and it'll all balance out. But certainly at this particular point of the season, we are seeing some quite a lot of goaltenders sort of under that 900 threshold. So it does seem to be a little bit of a down year for goalies, but down years for goalies equal more goals, and more goals equals more excitement, and I've got no problems with that whatsoever. I don't know if that was
just off of that. Well, it's something we might look at deep diving in the future potentially. But for me, I'm just thinking it could also be shot percentages are lower. Less shots on net because we're playing tighter hockey, or then the teams aren't willing just to fire the puck on the net, so therefore the volumes aren't as high. So therefore, when they score a goal, that's a quick law of averages, but if you concede 3 goals on 30 shots, is different if you concede 3 goals on 40 shots. And those 10 extra shots, yes, they're on goal, but if they're from the blue line and they're just sort of they're not like challenging the keeper at all, but that can also impact save percentages, which is why it may be a bit of a flawed stat.
Yeah,
But
potentially, and like you say, I think teams are that they're because the game's so fast now. You're not really in a position where you can afford to just give up a loose puck. Just from attempting shot after shot after shot. So I think teams are being a bit more cautious when they have the puck, and will try and work their way into one really, really good scoring opportunity as opposed to 3 or 4 kind of just fling it at the net and see what happens. So yeah, no, that is interesting. We'll maybe certainly look at deep diving that, maybe see if we can speak to someone who's involved in coaching, or someone who coaches goaltenders and things like that, and maybe see if there's any way, if there's any correlation there. But yeah, if there's any goalkeeper coaches out there listening, then get in contact with us, let us know. But they go on a small road trip to play the Ducks and the Sharks before returning home to face the Golden Knights and the Rangers. So again, I could see it being a bit more of like an up and down week for Utah. Just seeing how they perform. But I think they're going to find it hard, I think, to make a real dent in this division because of the strength of every other team around it.
yeah, I just don't think they're scoring enough. They're not explosive enough. And Schwartz. Oh, sorry, I mean Schmaltz. Is still the team's top scorer, but he doesn't seem to have been sort of in and around it. He's the one with 21 points in 18 games. After that, you got Kelleher with 18 points in 18 games, and after that, you got sort of 14 points in 18 games for Cooley, Gunther, and Sergachev. So when you're looking at the other teams ahead, and you got 2 or 3 at least players over a point a game on the season, and Utah don't seem to have that firepower mixed in with obviously whatever the cause is for maybe Ramelka not leading the league in stats. I think they're playing a lot of sort of closer games or whatever, and maybe not quite up to same like sort of star quality. Not to say that they're a bad team at all. I think they're still going to be in it closer to the end, and I don't think they're going to drop any lower than 6th. So this might be the lowest we see them this year.
Yeah, I'd agree. I'd agree with that, especially when you look at the 2 teams below them. I think potentially that top 6 in the division, early days, and I might regret it in saying it, but I think the top 6 in that division could be well set, and I think the 2 teams around beneath it could be having a struggle.
Yeah, and icky hockey really. Up one spot miraculously is the St. Louis Blues. They're on 16 points, so 5 points behind the Utah Mammoth. 6-9-4 record with a -22 on the season. They've had 3 games this week. They beat the Flames 3-2. Wow, great result for them. They lost in a shootout against the Flyers, and then lost to the Golden Knights 4-1. So I don't know what to say about the St. Louis Blues. It's uninspiring hockey, and since they lost to the Kings in October, I think they were destined not to do anything with their season, really.
Yeah, in the old St. Louis LA wildcard battle, they've fallen off a little bit. I think the main shining point for St. Louis is that Jimmy Snuggerud, their rookie forward, has been. He's had a good week. He's got a goal and 2 assists. He's got sort of 11 points in 19 games on the season, which for a young rookie forward playing on a bad team, they'll be really happy with. I like Snuggerud. He's a kind of fast, powerful skater. Finds a way of getting his body in the right place at the right time to sort of either redirect a shot or, But I really like him. I think he's a good player. I don't know if you've kind of caught much of him over this year, or I don't know if St. Louis are high on your watch list.
They're not high on my watch list. I mean, it's another player with a great name, a great memorable name, and I hope for his sake his career isn't just sort of defined by being on this sort of poor Blues team. I mean, if they do trade Kyrou later down the line, he's in line to be the star sort of first line goal scorer for them, which is good for him. There's just not much more to say about this team. I'm really disappointed with this team.
Yeah.
We had them 16th in our power rankings, and they're just been nowhere near that level. And Jim Montgomery, I mean, looking at where Boston are now compared to last year and what's happening there, I just think maybe Montgomery. I don't know. I don't know. I haven't spent that much time thinking about it. I'm trying to work it out in my head now, and I'm not getting anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's, you can't pin it all on one position. We've touched on it sort of week after week. Their goaltending's been poor, really, really poor. Whether goaltending stats are up or down this year, both of their goaltenders are under 870. So you've got 869 on Binnington, 867 on Hoffa. Yeah, I mean, Binnington's already on the preliminary Canada roster for the Olympics, but I think there's going to be a couple of Canadian goaltenders a bit sort of cheesed off at that, I think, because he's just not having a good year. But, I've repeatedly gone after Jordan Binnington. I'm going to cut him some slack this week, and I'm not going to go after him again because that'd be 3 episodes in a row. But I'm just more than content moving into the bottom team in this league if you've got nothing else to say on the Blues.
I'm tempted to go in on him instead to give you a break, but I think we know what the crack is there. Let's not give these bad teams long airtime. But yeah, the Nashville Predators, bottom of the division now. They've had a bit of a stinker. They lost against the Rangers, and then they actually played in the Global Series in Stockholm with 2 games against the Penguins, and they won the first one in overtime before then getting shut out in the second game. Yeah, Nashville Predators, they're just not inspiring either. The team just the names aren't performing, and that's the end of that. I don't know what exactly is going on, but they're not doing well.
No, and I do think potentially, you look at Nashville as a team that could maybe look at indulging in a fire sale. You could certainly see some of those names being shipped out the door. This year's draft is a really strong draft, and if there's, I know teams are going to be sort of apprehensive of giving up their picks for this year's draft for that reason. But if someone like Ryan O'Reilly becomes available to a contender, to maybe go in there and be a third center or something like that, then maybe that's something worth giving it up for if it's going to bring you closer to a cup. But yeah, Nashville have been really poor, really, really poor this season. I don't know kind of if we necessarily expected them to have too much of a bounce back this year, but we maybe expected them to be better than last year. But they're just not. They're just a bad team.
Yeah, and I think they sort of had a sort of a soft rebuild with all these signing middle road NHL players, strong names. I say middle road, obviously Stamkos, O'Reilly, Forsberg. These are like premium names in the league, but it's not working. It's not happening. I don't think they'll be able to sort of retool this squad to become anywhere near sort of playoff team. So I realistically see the Predators fire sailing, going to deep rebuild mode.
Yeah, and I think you're going to see a lot of teams starting to try and rebuild through the draft a bit more, again because the availability of free agents and things I think is going to sort of diminish. Teams are going to have to get better in the draft. So I think like you said, they brought in some big names, but almost sort of 4, 5, 6 years too late. Bringing Steven Stamkos in when they did is nothing like bringing in the Steven Stamkos that they 5 years prior. Obviously, he was never going to leave Tampa in that time, but yeah, it's kind of like getting big names through the door to get people excited, but actually kind of getting them in the twilight of their career. So, I could see them going into full rebuild mode. To be honest, I think that's the only way they get themselves out of this.
Yeah, poor people in Nashville and Tennessee. Their NHL team sucks. The NFL team sucks. I don't even know if they have any other teams, but they're not doing poor sporting environment down there at the moment.
Yeah, well, they've got country music to cheer them up.
Yeah, and good food.
Mm.
So we'll move on then, heading over to the Eastern Conference with the Metropolitan Division. Shake things up a bit. Now, again, in first place, moving up a spot this week, I think it's another two-team juggernaut division here. But the New Jersey Devils have had a pretty good week. I say pretty good week. They've lost their first game in overtime to the Islanders, beat the Blackhawks in overtime, as we sort of touched on already, and they beat the Capitals in a shootout. But what's interesting for the Devils, I just want to point out, is they've had 5 straight overtime games and gone 4-1 in those games. So they're closing out the victories when they need them. But yeah, they find themselves on top of the division again.
They have, and there was a couple of points I was going to bring in with New Jersey. First things first, Nemec scored a hat trick against Chicago. The young defenseman, I think he's the youngest defenseman to score a hat trick, including the winner in overtime in NHL history. Really, really niche stat. But yeah, it just had one of those nights where everything he hit just went in. However, I don't know if if you've been sort of keeping up with what's been happening on social media this week about what's happened with Jack Hughes. Now, I'm convinced that the penalty box perspective has cursed Jack Hughes, because each week we've come by the Devils and we've gone with, they're playing really, really well. They've been really exciting. Jack Hughes is doing great. Providing he stays healthy, this team can really go places. Have you seen what's happened to Jack Hughes this week?
I have. Now, I'm not sure if there's any sort of pictures or any more information, but here's what I understand. Right. He's gone out for a meal, and like an adult, he's been given some metal cutlery or something to eat his food with, and he's left that meal with an injury to his hand that's going to keep him out for several weeks, if not a month.
Yep. Now, I'd slightly heard a slightly contradictory. Obviously, we weren't there. We weren't there at. I think the place as well was called like the Big Cut or something in Chicago, which is just it's just hilarious. So one aspect I'd heard of it was that he'd injured himself with a steak knife. The other part of it that I'd heard was that he'd leant on a glass, and that the glass had shattered, causing his hand injury. Either way, regardless if it's a steak knife or a rogue glass, Jack Hughes injures himself. He requires surgery. I think they said he's expected to miss eight weeks plus from getting injured at a team dinner, which is just you can't write it. These Hughes brothers are cursed. But you know what? Just taking
fragile.
just taking that aside for a second. I mean, the Devils have been really good this year because their team has stayed pretty healthy. Now, I don't know what this next 8 weeks is going to look like for the Devils. Hopefully, they can keep themselves up there in contention until Hughes comes back from his boo-boo, and then they can keep pushing on from there. Some more great goaltending from Jake Allen. He's on a 916 save percentage on this season. 10 games played, 7 wins. He's looking really good. So, good from him. They're getting some pretty decent goaltending from Markstrom as well. So they've got a decent tandem working there. They've got a road trip coming up with the Lightning, the Panthers, and the Flyers. So continuing their road trip that they're currently on. So some tricky games in there. But yeah, this team's just just cursed. Yeah.
Right. In future, like he keeps getting injured in these fashions, you're gonna have to put a staff member with him at all time. Cut up his food for him, like put on a backpack, with a rubber straw that you can pull the drinks through, so he doesn't go anywhere near any sort of glass.
Or on those
put him in a straight
bladder
jacket in a padded room.
Oh my god! Yeah, just give him
the
smoothies.
Long distance runners.
Yeah, just give him smoothies.
Just literally, do not let him play Xbox because he might strain his thumb. Do not. Honestly, I don't understand it. Like, because this could very well derail New Jersey's season. Like, I'm not going to doom and gloom, and they're a good team, good squad, etc. But it's just stuff like this where if they miss the playoffs this year, they can't just continue to say, "Oh well, we went off a cliff because our star player got injured, and it wasn't even really a hockey thing. There's nothing we can do about it." No, not having it.
No, it's
This
going
is
to
with
require
professional athletes, professional sports. Like you get paid millions of dollars. Like what? No, no.
just eat your food. Yeah, it is.
Just eat your food. But
It is going to open up an opportunity, isn't it, though, for someone like Nico Hischier to step up into Jack Hughes's role. Obviously, Jesper Bratt's had a good year. Dawson Mercer's having a good year. Timo Meyer's having a good year. But all those guys are now going to have to give an extra 10% in Hughes's absence, I think, if they really want to sort of keep up that momentum that they've had over the year.
yeah, we've all worked with those people who seem to be a bit job shy. Who are probably good at their job, but they're never in work. And I'm not sure whether it's on Hughes' part where he doesn't want to play, but it just must be extremely frustrating for that team to constantly be without the star man and having to cut it all by themselves. But yeah, good week for the Devils on the ice, off the ice, maybe not.
No, no. Right, the second place team in this division, down one spot from last week, the Carolina Hurricanes. Now, I've touched on them already. They're having a great season, 25 points on the year with a 12-5-1 record. Yeah, bit of an up and down week for them. 3 points from the 3 games. They got a 4-1 loss to the Capitals. They beat the Canucks in overtime 4-3 and lost to the Oilers in overtime 4-3 to kind of close out their home stretch before they go on a road trip. But yeah, sort of there's been a few teams who've played 3 games and got 3 points this week, Nathaniel. But we're not worried about Carolina in any way here, are we?
No, we're not. Every team has sort of a few rough games, etc. And I wouldn't necessarily say rough. They just haven't been firing on all cylinders, which is probably why they're not as good at the moment as sort of Colorado, etc. and stuff like that. But they are my pick for the Stanley Cup Finals from the East. But I think they just had a bit of a slow week, really. They go up against the Bruins, Wild, Jets, and Sabres on a 4-game away trip next week. I think they're going to be fine. I don't know really what much to say about the Hurricanes, really, other than we'll see you in the playoffs still.
Yeah, I'd say just keep doing what you're doing. They've got a 4-game road trip coming up against the Bruins, the Wild, the Jets, and the Sabres. So again, I think 4 or 5 points is probably on the table. But for a team of Carolina's caliber, you'd maybe think they can get a bit more. But yeah, I would just say to Carolina, keep doing what you're doing, and we'll see you in the playoffs.
Yeah, need a bit more scoring potentially, but apart from that, but yeah. Another team that's had a good week and a good nice little holiday to Sweden is the Pittsburgh Penguins, who 2 games this week have been against the Predators in Stockholm. So we've already sort of covered the games. They lost in overtime 2-1 in the first one before winning a 4-0 shutout in the second game. So they still sat comfortably in third place in this division. Yeah, not much to say about the Penguins other than they keep proving everybody wrong.
Well, yeah, I would just say shout out to Sergei Murashov as well. Second NHL start, gets his first shutout. The AHL goaltender of the month from October got the call to come up to the big leagues, and he's showing that he can, dance at that level. He's 21 years old. Has an absolutely gigantic pair of testicles on him to take the number 1 jersey in Pittsburgh. Love that for him. And I think there's Russian goalies tend to figure out how to get it done at the NHL level. So hopefully Pittsburgh have found themselves a bit of a gem there. So really impressive from him. Really glad for my friend Jacob as well. He's a big Pittsburgh fan, and I think this season's gone way better than he could have expected. So really good from them, and I think they're just like you said, continuing to prove people wrong.
Yeah, and they got another sort of rookie on the first line, Kindle, who's doing really well as well. It is Penguins, isn't it? It's not the Bruins. I get the Penguins and Bruins sometimes mixed up. But Kindle is on the Penguins, isn't it?
Kindle is on the Penguins. Yeah. He's had he's been brilliant this year. And again, really exciting from from their end that they've got him, and again, someone who's jumped straight into the league, and yeah, he's done really, really well.
Well, yeah, they got home games against the Wild and Kraken coming up. So, but yeah, they're actually a team I actually quite like watching. I did watch a bit of the 4-0 win against the Predators, and they're a bit of a fun team to watch with some of their oldies and the youngsters coming up as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll move on then to the fourth team in the Metro. Sort of the second sort of grouping of teams I'd put it, with the top three sort of how they're doing at the minute. But the New York Islanders up one spot, 22 points. They've had a bit of an unusual week. Busy 4 road games against the Devils, Golden Knights, Mammoth, and Avalanche. I remember speaking about them last week about how this was going to be a tough stretch of games and they could really get pummeled and potentially might make or break their season. But you know what? They pulled out 3 wins, all in overtime, and then a loss. So they beat the Devils, Golden Knights, and Mammoth, all in overtime, before finally succumbing to the Colorado Avalanche. So yeah, what are your thoughts on the Islanders?
Yeah, I mean, we said last week, didn't they, that this could be a really, really tricky week for them. In terms of really damaging their season as a whole. Really, really tough stretch of games. But like you said, they came up clutch, overtime win, overtime win, overtime win. Really, really good in that regard. And then you fall 4-1 to the Colorado Avalanche. Them and everyone else this year. So yeah, they've been absolutely. They've been great this week. They've really found a way to get it done. They've still got 2 more road games left on that trip. They've got the Stars and they've got the Red Wings coming up. So again, sort of slightly tricky road games before they then return home to the Blues and the Kraken. But you know what? Bo Horvat's having a good year. Matty Schaefer's having a good year. I'm not going to say anything about the health of Matthew Barzal before he, I don't know, steps on a rake and injures himself for 4 months.
Simpson style.
Yeah. That's what immediately came to mind. But yeah, good week for the Islanders, probably better than they were expecting, and it's reflected. They've got 22 points on the year, so yeah, happy days for them.
Yeah, they had an issue at the start of the year where Sorokin wasn't either not performing or was just having a bit of bad luck, etc. But he's starting to sort of turn it round. He's putting in some good performances. Obviously, they've got their sort of defensive fragilities in some regards, but I think he's performing better now. So yeah, I mean, the Islanders are improving. They're there or thereabouts. Whether they're a playoff team or could go the distance, that remains to be seen. But they're not going to go away without a fight this year. They're going to be there or thereabouts come the end. They're still going to be relevant, is what I'm trying to say.
Seemingly so. Yeah, seemingly so.
So, the next team, also on 22 points, team going neck and neck, and a bit of a random team, aren't they? The New York Rangers.
Yeah. Good week for the Rangers. It's been a good week for New York as a whole in that regard. 6-3 win against the Predators at home. And then they won. They won away against the Lightning, 7-3. They beat the Jackets in a shootout, and then they returned to Madison Square Garden and lost. But that happens all the time. Artemi Panarin, big week for him. 2 goals and 6 assists, so 8 points in those 4 games. 5 points for Adam Fox as well. 4 points for Zibanejad and Coyley. But yeah, so you're seeing. You've seen a bit of a bounce back week from them. Igor Shesterkin's been great. Jonathan Quick's been great as well. And I don't think, to be honest, I don't think really at any point this season the goaltending's been an issue for the Rangers. They've generally been quite good as far as, they've both got. I mean, Jonathan Quick's got a .951 save percentage, which is just absolutely, yeah, granted, okay, he's only played 5 games, but he's got 3 wins and a shutout. But they've got arguably one of the best goalie tandems in the NHL at the moment. The problem's been they just haven't been able to put the puck in the net enough on a frequent basis. So yeah, they've seemingly found a way to do that this week. They've got the Golden Knights, the Avalanche, and the Mammoth coming up on the road this week. That's going to be tough for them. But we saw the Islanders manage it. Maybe the Rangers will manage it as well. Away from home, they're a different team.
They are a different team away from home, but I think their defense is what's keeping them in in league this year. I mean, they only, well, they considered 3 goals, 1 goal, and then 2 goals. So when they score, they win games. It's just the fact of scoring from the outset. Now, the only other thing I was going to say is that Detroit game. I don't know whether you saw it, but Detroit buzzer ended. They fired the puck into the net, and it ended up in a whole bench off brawl at the
Of
end of that
course it
game. And
did.
Jonathan Quick got himself a 10-minute unsportsmanlike for getting involved as well, which was I love to see goalkeepers getting
Yeah,
stuck in.
yeah. They always just look hilarious because all their padding, they just look so massive in comparison to everyone else that they kind of like shuffle their
Mr.
way
Blobbies.
over. Yeah, yeah. No, I didn't see that actually. No, that was one of the games. I saw that it finished sort of 2-1 to Detroit, so it kind of ended up further down the list of the ones that I wanted to watch. But no, I'll give that a watch
Yeah.
when we're all done.
Yeah, it's just little. I mean, it wasn't that big a juicy a fight or anything like that. It's just always funny to see a goalkeeper just waddling out and getting stuck in. Especially with Quick, like he ain't getting any younger. As you think when you're getting to that age as a goaltender, you kind of just sitting back and enjoying getting
Yeah,
paid a backup
keep your
keeper
head down.
salary. Keep your head down. But no, they still got the spark.
No, always
Um,
love to see it. Love to see it.
So another team then in sixth place now, down a couple of spots, having the kind of week where I'd say sort of the middle week where you play 3 games and you get 3 points. The Philadelphia Flyers, they lost in overtime to the Oilers before beating the Blues in a shootout and then getting demolished by the Stars 5-1. So, I mean, even though they got 3 points, I still think they've had a pretty poor week, the Flyers, in respect.
Yeah, reasonably. I don't think they've played that well. I did see Trevor Zegras in the shootout in that game against the Blues. Trevor Zegras is just one of those guys who he has when it comes to the shootout. It's like watching Patrick Kane back in the day. You just know that he's going to score, and his percentage accuracy in the shootout for scoring is among one of the best in the league. So that was a high point for them, but yeah, it was a disappointing performance against Dallas. But they're a really good team, and the talent gap was just evident, and they just blew the Flyers out the door. So yeah, I don't think we expected too much of them. Within this division, they seem to be finding themselves in a position where they move up a couple of spots and then down a couple of spots. But yeah, I think certainly if the two teams in New York can figure it out and start playing better on a more consistent basis, I think they might find themselves pulling away from Philadelphia a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the bottom end after the sort of top 3 teams, really. I think the standard quality at the minute in this division sort of drops off. So while the Flyers can sometimes be up there and then they can easily drop down, and I think they're relying a bit too much on maybe Dan Vladar to have a good game. The rest of the keeper situation, Erson isn't good for me at
No,
all. He
no,
always
no.
looks fairly weak, and sometimes Vladar doesn't have the best of games either. So it's kind of when he's on his game, that's when they're in it to win it. I mean, they beat the Blues with Erson in the net with a 705 save percentage. Yeah, not ideal, but yeah, they're just uninspiring. You just know that they're not a bad watch. They're not a bad team. They're just kind of mid, aren't they? I think.
Very much so. Yeah, very much so. They're not bad. They're just not particularly great either.
Yeah. So that moves on then into the 7th team up 1 spot in the Metro. The Columbus Blue Jackets sat on 20 points. So like I say, they're very close to the teams above them. 4 games this week. Lost in overtime to the Oilers. Lost on penalties to the Rangers. Beat the Kraken on penalties, and then beat the Oilers sort of in regulation as well. So tight, close games do Columbus like to play, and it's sometimes they win, sometimes they don't, and it's just that consistency I think is why they're not further up the league really.
Yeah, completely agree. They're finding themselves just sort of unable to put themselves together a consistent run of results. Like you said, they play a lot of tight games. This week, it's played out quite well for them. They've come away with 6 points on the week, and happy days. However, on other weeks we've seen it where they've come away with next to nothing. So yeah, kind of in a similar position to the Flyers, really. Like, I don't think Columbus are a bad team. They've Fantilli, Marchenko, Voronkov, all great players. Werenski's an amazing defenseman on the back end, so I think Werenski will be another one getting that Olympic call up with Team USA. But they're just not consistent enough, and as a result, they're kind of falling into that sort of mid category. They've got the Canadiens coming up at home before they go on a road trip with the Jets, the Maple Leafs, and the Red Wings. So again, it's another sort of not a really straightforward bunch of games for them. They might win a couple, they might lose a couple, but I don't think it's going to allow them to move up and down that much in the standings. But happy to be corrected if they fancy going out and doing that. I will just say one other final point, though, is that it seemingly seems that Jet Greaves has won the starting spot in goal for the Blue Jackets at the moment. Seems to have been playing more than Merzlikins recently, and they seem to be happy with the way he's doing it. So
Yeah, he played all 4 games this week. We were talking earlier about when you got 3 games in 5 days, maybe you put in your rotation Winnipeg, but then you got Columbus who've got 4 games in sort of 6 days, and they're playing the same keeper all the way throughout. But he's doing all right. He's not jumping off the page, and I don't think Merzlikins was necessarily performing poorly. But again, maybe they're just working some things out, seeing how things are. Maybe wasn't feeling well or something. Merzlikins, so he needed a bit of time down. I don't know, but
yeah, possibly.
yeah, they just. I've still got a soft spot for this team because of Johnny Gaudreau, and I want to see him do better. Really, I think
I'm
they're
exactly
a nice team.
I'm exactly the same. I do really like the Blue Jackets, and these guys they've all had to overcome so much, on a personal level, and I do want them to do well. I love the cannon when they score. I would hate to be the guy sat underneath the cannon when they score. But yeah, I do like the Columbus Blue Jackets. I think they're an easy team to root for, I think.
Interesting franchise in that respect. Normally, you'd be the sort of the grey team of the league, but yeah, right. Talk about a team that have gone from the top to the bottom. The Washington Capitals rooted to the bottom of this division, 18 points. You know what, Matt? I don't think they're a good team. I think that's what it's coming down to now. They beat the Hurricanes away 4-1, and lost against the Panthers 6-3, and lost in the shootout against the Devils 3-2. I just think in a division of 8 teams, you got to have a poor team, and I think this might be it. If it isn't for the keeper Thompson, I think they get blown out every game for the most part.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Like you said, law of averages, dictates that every division needs to have a bad team. There needs to be one team that finishes bottom of the division. Unfortunately, I just think that's going to be Washington this year. They just don't look at it at all. Logan Thompson's been great. He's been brilliant. But yeah, they're just not getting the scoring that they were last year. Wilson, Strome, Ovechkin. Ovechkin's got 14 points in 18 games, so he's kind of doing okay. John Carlson's got 14 points in 17 games. Jacob Chikrin's playing reasonably well, but they're playing okay, but not really anything more than that. They don't have a bona fide kind of definitive scorer. Yeah, they're just struggling, and I think that. I think they're maybe going to have to sort of hit the reset button this year, I think, and sort of figure out where things lay in the future.
And I still think that last year, I think they played way above where they should have been last year, which then warps people's sense of perception about how they're going to be a great team this year as well. And I think they maybe regressed a bit more than what I would have predicted. But again, I don't think they were that great to begin with. It's all these names and stuff like that were smashing it all over the place. But they got Tom Wilson as a top scorer, for God's sake. Like, when he's your top scorer and also like your top penalty minute taker, that's when you sort of bang your head against a wall.
It's
Really.
not a recipe for playoff hockey, is it?
No, but no, Logan Thompson, I think, is a sort of a star in the making. I mean, he's got 185 goal against average and 925 save percentage, and yeah, I reckon he's going to the Olympics personally.
Yeah,
How can you
I,
have Binnington and not Thompson?
I completely agree with you, and I think Logan Thompson's going to fight him for that starting position. I mentioned it in the last podcast, but you've got Biddington there already. I know he's been in a lot of big games, but I think that Logan Thompson's been the better goaltender this season. And when it comes down to Olympic hockey, you've got to play your best. I don't think it's a time to be sentimental. I don't think it's a time to say, oh, well, this guy did really well for us at the Four Nations face-off. Therefore, it's like, no, play your best if you want to take home that gold medal. And I think Logan Thompson will get that nod. He just needs to keep up the way he's playing and just keep doing what he can to stake his claim.
Yeah. Right. Any more on the Capitals, or shall we move back again west to the Pacific?
Nah, let's swing it back out. Let's swing it back out west.
What a weird division this is going to be this year. So up 3 spots, back up to first overall, is a team we thought were pretty mid this year. Obviously, they beat the Blues, and so I thought they were going to make the playoffs. But the LA Kings are now atop the Pacific Division with 24 points. They have played 3 games on an away trip and won every single one against the Canadiens, the Maple Leafs, and the Senators. So, proving Canada may not be the home of hockey, but I'll leave that tip for somebody else.
Oh dear! Oh dear!
No, I take the mick there. I think it's just a 1 week thing. This, isn't it?
Well, yeah, like I say, they're a weird team. We glazed the Ducks last week. Obviously, they've had a poor week. We'll get to that in a second. But the Kings have had a great week, haven't they? 3 games, 3 wins, shutout win against the Senators as well. Anton Forsberg getting the shutout there, finding a way to get it done against the Maple Leafs in overtime, and then taking the Habs apart 5-1. Great week for Quinton Byfield, 2 goals and 3 assists in that, and Laferriere as well, got 2 goals and an assist as well. Obviously they've had a good week. They've got that new deal over the line for Kempe. Again, I think it's just going to be a case of trying to put together some consistency. If a team wants to pull away in this division, it's up for grabs, I think, with some of the teams up and down it. But yeah, they've got the Capitals and the Sharks to round out their road trip, and then they come back home and face the Boston Bruins. But yeah, they're a good team, LA. There's no doubt about that. They're a solid team. They're getting good goaltending from Kemper and Forsberg. They've each got a shutout on the season. They both got goals against under 3. Forsberg's got an 890 save percentage. Kemper's got a 903. So, they're getting good goaltending there as well. But yeah, I think it's just going to need a team to pull out that consistency.
Yeah. And I think they are a fairly consistent team in the Kings. You know what you're going to get when you watch them, which I think is what might put them in good stead when you consider the marathon length of the season. I mean, just to run down, I won't explain the teams, but they're in first place on 24 points, and the 5th place team are on 22 points. So this is a very, very close division. Interesting watch, really, as you see it go up and down, up and down. They got games against the Capitals, Sharks, and Bruins. I mean, put your foot down, Kings. Let's get this over the line. Let's stretch ahead, put some distance, and hopefully feel a bit more comfortable. But they're a team that don't score that much, and they don't concede much either. So it's very up in the air for me, I think.
Yeah, I would completely. Yeah, I think they're a playoff team. 100%. Well, 90%. But yeah, I think, like I said, this division's open for the taking, and the second place team had a rough going of it this week, I think.
Yeah, the Anaheim Ducks. Sorry to say, they played 3 and lost 3 this week. Obviously, lost against the Avalanche, which is no great shake. They then lost to the Red Wings 6-3, and then they got shut out against my Wild team. So hopefully, this is just one of them poor weeks for this team, and they don't take it on the chin too much.
Yeah,
they're young.
It's a bit of a blip, isn't it? And I think that all young teams will have. They will have weeks like this, won't they? Where where it just doesn't fall for you. That they've come away from the week with no points. They didn't have any players at a point per game either. Yeah, just a tricky one. But I think the key for this young team is not to get too low with the lows, and then just not to get too high with the highs either. And I know that hockey players, probably more than any other athletes, I think probably kind of do exemplify that, really heavily. That they don't kind of get too extreme one way or the other with, when it comes to their emotions. And I think that they can maybe look to bounce back. They've got the Mammoth, the Bruins, the Senators, and the Golden Knights coming up, all at home. So I think they do have an opportunity there to sort of turn things back around a little bit and get themselves moving back in the right direction. But yeah, just a bit of a blip week for the Ducks, I think.
Yeah, and same as another young team, which we'll go on to talk about. I am worried that they could go into a bit of a tailspin. I hope it doesn't happen because I like the Ducks. They're another team that I quite like to watch. But what you can't replace is like scoring. It's easy. You got some teams in this league who are struggling to get the puck in the net, and that doesn't seem to be overall an issue with the Ducks. Obviously, this week's been a bit different, but I think they've shown that they can. So therefore, they will do so again in the future, if that makes sense. It's easier to bring something back than it is to introduce anything in the first place.
Yeah, completely agree. I think that sometimes the hardest thing in hockey is putting the puck in the net, and they've shown that they can do that already this season. Carlson's still got 26 points in 18 games, and Gautier's got 21 in 18, and Troy Terry's got 20 in 18. So they're more than capable of scoring, and I think that will hopefully come back around for them this week.
Yeah. So the dry team of the NHL, which is weird considering they play in Seattle where it rains all the time and they call the Kraken. They remain in third spot, 23 points, a 9-4-5 record on the season with a -1. They lost to the Blue Jackets in a shootout, but then beat the Jets 5-3 and the Sharks 4-1. So they are a team that we're going to have to change our view on, aren't they? They are a team that's going to be there or thereabouts in contention this year.
Potentially. I mean, when we talk about the the Ducks and their sort of ability to to put the puck in the net, you're kind of looking down the scoring chart of that Seattle team, and they have scored, albeit kind of 10 goals in their last 3 games. But you've got Jaden Schwartz leading the team with with 14 points in 18 games on the season. So they don't even have a guy close to a point per game. This season. Yeah, I think we are going to have to take them seriously at some point. I don't think I'm ready to take them seriously just yet. But we'll see. They're getting some kind of half decent goaltending at the moment. That's kind of keeping them afloat. Their next 4 games are on the road. They've got the Red Wings, the Blackhawks, the Penguins, and the Islanders. So, you could potentially see them spin out a little bit if they're if that scoring dries up a little bit. But yeah, they've had 3 goaltenders play this season, all of which are above a 900 goal save percentage. Decord is on 900 exactly. But yeah, they're hanging in there, aren't they? They are hanging in there.
Yeah, hanging in there. But I can't believe I didn't really think of this before. But your top scorer is the name of a company who makes all the spices and stuff and herbs and stuff you see on the shelf, I think. So I think if my mind started wandering and thinking about the fact that I need to buy some rosemary when I next go to the shop, it goes to show that I don't really pay much attention to Kraken hockey.
Yes.
But maybe I should. And if I watched them, it might then get me invested in what they're doing. But when you got the other teams in this division who are scoring goals for fun or seemingly have a different storyline interests, even when Kraken are having a good season, they does seem to be grabbing my attention, which I'm sorry, Kraken fans.
Yeah,
but
I agree.
as long as you're ahead of the 4th team.
Well, yeah.
As long as you're ahead of the 4th team in this division, the Vegas Golden Knights, who, I watched the Wild game last night, and I'm not impressed by this team.
No, neither. They've kind of gone off the boil a little bit. They started the season like a house on fire, and just kind of seemingly dried up. I mean, okay, yeah, they've taken 6 points out of no, sorry, they haven't. They've taken 4 points out of the 8 available. But yeah, that's the kind of the absolute storming season that Jack Eichel had, and we were talking about him being one of the favourites for the Hart Trophy out the gate. It's kind of all dried up a little bit. I mean, yes, okay, he's on 24 points in 18 games. A large portion of that, though, he picked up at the start of the season, but yeah, they've just sort of fallen away a little bit. Like you said, it's so tight. I mean, they're fourth place in this division, but they're 2 points off of first place. I'm still not concerned about Vegas in terms of their ability to make the playoffs. I think they can, and I think they probably will. But again, it's it's kind of the slightly sort of age-old issues, some kind of slightly questionable goaltending in certain places. Lindbom's not got a win yet when he's started this year. He's on an 873. They just sort of lost their spark a little bit.
Yeah. I think we kind of expect them to be, especially with the other teams and how they're playing, they should be out front and leading this division. But the fact that they're not, and they're in this sort of purgatory, I mean, do I think they're going to drop out and not make the playoffs? No, I think they will. They will end up in the playoffs just due to the star quality that they have. But I mean, if they continue playing like this in the playoffs, they're going to get mollywopped by any team from the Central, in my mind. But we'll see. Like I said, they've got Rangers, the Mammoth, and the Ducks. So sort of a midweek next week in terms of game teams that they're playing. Let's see what's going on. I want more from Marner personally from a fantasy team. I know he's got 20 points in 18 games, but I'm sick of him getting assists. Put the goal in the back of the net once in a while, please. He should be it's a high round pick. He should be scoring goals as well as just passing it to Dorofeyev or Eichel or whatever. But yeah.
Right. Yeah, I've got nothing further to add on Vegas for me. I'll move into the next one if you are.
Yeah, I'm happy to as well. Another team that just frustrates me. I don't know what it is about this division and the teams in it. They just get simply no. I've got no love for the Oilers at all. They're in 5th place. They're up 2 spots. They've won 3 out of their 4 games this week, all of them in overtime. And from what I've seen, it's just kind of they've ground out those results, but with no real conviction. And they could have easily lost them as well, and against pretty sort of not weak opposition, but lower level opposition. So they beat the Blue Jackets in overtime, the Flyers in overtime, and the Hurricanes in overtime. But yeah, what are your thoughts on the Oilers?
Yeah, they are a frustrating team, aren't they? Like I said, they are up 2 spots from our last podcast. They are 5th, but only 2 points off of first. So they could shoot up even more. I think the main thing is that McDavid seems to have found his mojo, hasn't he? He's now got 30 points in 20 games on the season, so he's projecting for, if he played all 82 games, he's projecting for just over 120 points on the season, which is, at this point, just what you'd come to expect from Connor McDavid. Guy's a freak. 9 goals and 21 assists on the season, so he's doing. But interestingly, on a -1. Which I know plus minus isn't the be all and end all, but I do find that interesting. Jack Roslovic.
Bouchard, I think.
Well, yeah, I think so. I mean, Bouchard's had a decent week, hasn't he? He's got a goal and 5 assists, but the questions aren't ever of Bouchard's offensive ability. I think his offensive ability is fine, but I think just what you trade off for him in terms of his defensive output, I think isn't worth it. Jack Roslovic seems to have been a really nice pickup for this Oilers team as well. Obviously, he came in as a free agent. He got 3 goals, 3 assists on the season, and he's got 14 points in 18 games this year. So, really nice acquisition for them. They're sort of in the midst at the moment of a massive road trip, so that they've played the Flyers, the Jackets, and the Hurricanes away from home. That continues with the Sabres, the Capitals, the Lightning, and the Panthers. So, they are more than capable of going out and winning all of those games and propelling themselves up the divisions. But they're also capable of kind of fumbling a couple of those as well. It kind of all depends on how their defense and how their goaltending happens on the night as well. I mean, Calvin Pickard's having a stinker of a year. He's somehow managed to pick up 2 wins in the 7 games he's played, but he's got a 4.17 goals against average and an 830 save percentage. So he's having a really poor year. backing up Stuart Skinner. So they're just such a night to night team. I just think it's really difficult to know what you're going to get.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to be in the Stanley Cup Finals this year, and I think on a personal level, like I don't pretend that I'm a neutral, or that I don't have my biases, and I'm not a fan of this team. But I think what will be really interesting, and would be great for us to talk about, is if the Oilers do fall off a cliff, and then what happens with McDavid and where he goes. I think that storyline would be the most interesting thing that we could probably talk about, and I kind of sort of want it to happen in a way, but
Yeah, yeah,
obviously
we all
we'll
do.
see.
Yeah, he's given him 2 more years, hasn't he? He's given him 2 more years to say, this show me, show me what you can do. But my God, if they don't, I don't see any world where the Oilers, would trade McDavid. I just don't think, just because I don't think a general manager, you just can't trade him. You just can't trade him. I think that's an instant way to, to lose your job. Regardless, I think, of the return that you would get for him. But yeah, I think the ball is ultimately in McDavid's court, and he holds all the cards at the moment. So he can keep doing what he's doing, and clearly his productivity is well up. And he's doing everything you would expect of him, but he's just going to need everyone else to start sort of chipping in.
Yeah, absolutely. So the sixth team then in this division, the Vancouver Canucks, who I think are going to be the perennial sixth team in this division moving forward. 20 points on the year, 9-9-2 record. They're a bit like the Flyers of this division for me. They're a bit just mid.
Yeah, completely agree. Completely agree. They are. Yeah, they're just inconsistent. I mean, great week for Quinn Hughes getting 7 assists in 2 games, like you do. Great performance from him, and he is an absolute star. We know that. But they're just the rest of the team's just not. I say it kind of week after week. They're just not a particularly inspiring team. And they've got the Panthers and the Stars coming up in the next 2 before they then play the Calgary Flames. So again, I think it'll be another week of a little bit of winning, a little bit of losing, but ultimately not really making any sort of headway or dent into the division. Another team who've played 3 and got 3 points.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll have to kind of turn it for that, I reckon. So the 3-3. Anyway, I'll get thinking about that. The cubed result, maybe. I don't know. Who knows? I don't have much really to say about the Canucks. Like I like they seem to have settled off ice a little bit. Obviously, we'll wait to see what happens with Hughes. He had some time out injured and then has come back and done well. They seem to be favouring Lankinen over Demko more recently. But yeah, they're just a mid team. They're fillers, I think.
I completely agree.
Now, then I'll lead off this next team with the question: was it just a one-off great week that they had, and have they regressed back to where we expect them to be?
Yeah, I think so. Look, we've said with the San Jose Sharks all season that this isn't as they're not looking at going anywhere this season in terms of standings and everything. The most important thing for them is their young players produce, and their young players show some leadership and ability to to carry the team. They're still getting that. Celebrini's got 3 assists in those 3 games. He's on 27 points in 19 games on the year. You've then got Smith and Eklund as the next 2 highest scorers afterwards. So you are still getting that production from your young players, which is, I think, exactly what they would have wanted. And I think as far as the Sharks teams go, I think they'll be quite happy with where they're at. They've got 19 points, which is arguably potentially more than they could have expected or at this particular time. And I think as an organisation, they'll be sort of quite happy with where they are. They're putting themselves in a position for another high draft pick at the end of the year, but their young stars are getting it, are performing and improving.
Yeah. I like the Sharks to watch. They're a fun little team. They've come back a bit down to earth. Celebrini's great. Obviously, a great goaltending for Maskarov in the past few games. So I just think the Berserker team will shock some teams, but they're not going to be in the playoffs, I don't think, either. Just nice little, more interesting version of the Canucks, I think.
Agreed.
A team that we don't really need to spend that much time on. I think they're fully in McKenna mode. But route to the bottom of the league on 13 points to Calgary Flames. They've only won 5 games this year and won one of them this week against the Sharks in the 2-0 shutout. But other than that, they lost against the Blues 3-2 and then lost the Jets on penalties 4-3. So I think they're fully in tank mode, whether intentional or not.
Agreed. 3 points in 3 games. Another one. But yeah, I'm happy for Dustin Wolf to get that to get the shutout. I really like Dustin Wolf. I think he's he's a really, really solid young goaltender and will be a star in this league. When the sort of old guard of the goaltenders move out, I think he's a really great goaltender, and you can't pin where they're at this season on him for me. Even with the team where they're at, he's at an .896 save percentage on the year. So he's doing everything he can. I think they're in full tank mode. I think at this point, there's it is a really deep draft, and that there is a lot more than just Gavin McKenna in this draft, and I know we'll maybe touch on the prospects as we get closer to Christmas, sort of as we kind of get halfway through the year and see sort of where the prospects are shaking out. But I think they're lining themselves up for a big pick.
Yeah. And I at this point now in the season, I've seen enough of the Flames to think that any game they go into now, they are going to be the underdog. It's pretty difficult because you can't sort of project a team to not win any games throughout the year. But I'm looking at the Blackhawks, Sabres, Stars, and Canucks, and I'm thinking maybe the Sabres, but they're not. They can't beat any of these other teams.
No, agreed.
And I feel bad for Wolf. I feel really bad for Dustin Wolf, because even if his stats aren't there, he's playing his heart out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really like him. He's a guy to root for.
Yeah. So we'll move into the final division then, and if you haven't already worked it out, it is the Atlantic Division. I try to get excited for this division, but sometimes it seems to be a bit of the more difficult one to get into. But yeah, it's the Boston Bruins has gone up one spot, 24 points. They've had a good week. They beat the Maple Leafs and the Canadiens, but then lost to the Senators. So weird to go from bottom to the top pretty much for the Boston Bruins, isn't it?
Yeah, bouncing back, and I think this is maybe a kind of a slightly weaker division. Well, on paper it shouldn't be, but I think the way it's shaken out this year, I think the teams have all been quite poor. But yeah, reasonable time for them. Pasternak's had a good week. They in the 3 games he's got 7 points. He's got 26 points in 20 games on the year. Geeky and Kolastic as well got 3 points in 3 games as well, and Tanner Jeannot got 3 assists on the week. So they're finding themselves up again, and they're a weird team. They are a weird team, and this is a weird division. I think a lot of people are kind of trying to lock Jeremy Swayman in for that third goaltender for the US Olympic team. I'm not kind of thoroughly convinced on that. I think Jeremy Swayman, since he signed that new contract, I think has been a bit underwhelming, in my opinion. But yeah, they've got the Hurricanes coming up at home, and then they go on the infamous California road trip of the Ducks, the Kings, and the Sharks. So yeah, I think it wouldn't shock me if we were talking about this team being, sliding down a couple of spots. It wouldn't surprise me if they were still kind of right back up at where they were. So they're just a funny old team of the Bruins this year.
Yeah. I mean, touching on the Swayman situation. Now, he had a poor year last year after doing so well with Ullmark the year before that. But I think where you see his qualities as a keeper is in comparison to when Korpisalo's in goal, because there is a significant drop off in the quality of the performances. And obviously, sometimes the stats can come off. But I'm watching a Bruins game, and Swayman's all over the place doing great stuff, and Korpisalo seems to be a such literal fire guard that you can't really move that much. It seems to be stuck there. But I don't know whether you saw that clip. It's one thing I saw on social media of Swayman taking. Well, I guess both players have taken shots recently. McAvoy got a puck to the chin, and that looked extremely painful. But then the funnier one was Swayman getting hit by a 90-mile-an-hour shot, and it knocked his helmet clean off his head. And you can see him just sort of like looking around with his eyes wide open, absolutely spooked.
Yeah, I mean, I think
what the hell? I've just been hit by a sniper.
I think the thing that spooked him is, I mean, it was God. I mean, we were 2 to 3 inches away from an absolute disaster. He's had his helmet knocked off by the guy screening him, and as his helmet's come, in the process of coming off, the slap shot comes in and it hits the top of his helmet as it's coming. But if his helmet is 2 inches more off the top of his head, that slap shot's hitting him square in the forehead, and potentially could have ended up in like a really, really serious injury. So yeah, I think he was. I think if he was a cat, he would have just burned one of his 9 lives. I think, but he lives to fight another day, and yeah, it was a really, really crazy moment, and yeah, I mean, thank God it didn't hit him in the face, but as a result, it creates for some fantastic content afterwards.
Yeah, I already know the headache from that adrenaline dump after that would be mighty painful, and as well as getting hit on the head in the first place. But yeah, I just know when you go through something like that, even now I'm getting that rush. Yeah, it's like skydiving or some other dangerous stuff where I probably would never ever do because I'm too scared. But anyway, right. We'll move on to the second team then, and the epitome of this division, the Detroit Red Wings are on another charge, Matt, up 3 spots, 23 points. Again, a 5-point return in 6 games this week, beating the Ducks 6-3, the Rangers 2-1, and then losing in up. But then you balance that with an overtime loss against the Sabres. So this is why I can't get my head around this division. Like, you got teams going up and down like yo-yos, beating better teams and losing against worse teams, and I don't know. I don't quite understand.
No, neither. It's a weird division, with teams just performing all over the place, and yeah, it's been a great week for Detroit to take the 5 points from the 6 available. Lucas Raymond's got a goal and 6 assists. DeBrincat's got 5 goals and an assist. They've had some really strong performances this year. This week even. Sorry. Yeah, their goaltending's been enough to get them through the week. Their goaltending's been a bit up and down. Detroit have been a bit up and down. This division's been a bit up and down. Honestly, the Atlantic Division at the moment is like a set of honeymoon bed springs.
Oh, I like that. Except you haven't had all the fun beforehand. Yeah. I don't know what much more to say about the try. I think we should leave that clearly on that.
We'll leave that there. We'll move into the next one. We'll move into the next one. Quit while we're ahead.
Yeah, well, one a honeymoon to another honeymoon, and this one was a honeymoon from nightmares, as it were. Maybe a divorce, the honeymoon after a divorce, potentially. With 3 losses in 3 games for the Montreal Canadiens, what is going on with that team? Kind of like the Ducks have just kind of had a really rough week, getting smashed by the Kings 5-1. That's 7-0 shutout against the Stars, and losing 2-3 against the Bruins as well. No players at a point per game. They've just had a shocking week.
Yeah, it's not been great, has it? And you're really hoping, for their sake. Similarly to the Ducks, it's just a young team having a bit of a blip of a week. The Kings and the Stars are relatively tricky games, but I mean, getting blown out 7-0 at home against the Stars is a really poor showing. Yeah, they've got the Blue Jackets, the Capitals, and the Maple Leafs coming up, so they have got a bit of an opportunity to turn that around a little bit. But yeah, it's just been a really, really tricky one for them, I think. And but all teams have them. and they'll just be hoping they can bounce back.
Yeah, I mean, it's the lowest percentage we've had this season on this podcast, but that Dallas Stars game of 631 save percentage for Dobes and Montembeau combined is just awful, really. Weird game, but anyway, we'll see how they do next week. I'm not going to shake them off, and they're still kind of like my favoured team to do well in this division. Sort of my sort of favourite to do well, but. Yeah, just a poor week for them, really.
Yeah, agreed. But they can move their way back up. But there's going to be a couple of teams sort of on their tails as the as the fourth team in the league would in that division would suggest.
Yeah, I mean the Ottawa Senators. I think continuing on these analogies, they're kind of like the bitter X that just won't go away. They're there with 22 points, down a spot. You watch them and you think, well, they're not a playoff team. Like, well, what they're doing, but they're there or thereabouts every single week. And again, they've got the 3 points in 3 games. They lost in overtime to the Stars, beat the Bruins 5-3, and then lost 1-0 in a shutout to the Kings. So, yeah, a bit of a weird one. I don't know much to say. Ullmark's playing better. The top line's doing all right. Stutzler's coming with 3 points. It's just they're not going away, are they, the Senators?
No, they will not lie down. But this is what we kind of said that they needed to do whilst they lost Tkachuk, was they just need to, by hook or by crook, just keep themselves in the sort of running and just keep themselves up there, and then they can bring Tkachuk back into the lineup and hopefully look to push on from there. I mean, what would have been a worst case scenario would have been just them going into absolute free fall when that happened. But they're finding a way to keep themselves, they're 2 points off the top of the division. They're finding themselves a way to keep themselves in it and keep it interesting. And then when Tkachuk comes back into the lineup, hopefully they're still in the position where they can kick on. But yeah, like you said, they're just not lying down at the moment.
No. But yeah, 2 games away, the LA road trip, Ducks and Sharks. So I think obviously the Ducks game will be difficult, and they think they get a result against the Sharks. So we'll just continue to monitor them. Really, they're kind of not jumping out, but not dropping back. The fifth team, however, I just keep thinking, where's this spark going to take place? They keep threatening to go on a run and do really well, and then it just seems to drop back again. They keep tripping over their own shoelaces. But the Tampa Bay Lightning, 20 points so far on the year. But yeah, 2 losses against the Rangers and the Canucks, and then they beat the Panthers at home. So yeah, what do you think about the Lightning?
Yeah, they're just we're kind of going week to week, sort of waiting for it to happen, and kind of going, I'm not too concerned about Tampa. They'll figure it out and they'll find it, and they managed to put a few wins together and everything like that. But again, there's just a few teams suffering some real consistency issues so far this year. They're not kind of getting the scoring that they would have liked from the likes of, Kucherov's got 16 points in 16 games, but you would even still expect hopefully a little bit more from him. And they don't really have a player over a point per game at the moment. You're hoping that they'll figure it out, and if there was a team that could do it, it would be Tampa. They've got the coaching, they've got the roster, and I'm sure that they will look to figure it out. And say they're only 4 points away off the top of this division, so it really is similarly to the previous division as well. It's open and available for the taking. They've just got to find that consistency and put it together. They've got the Devils, the Oilers, and the Capitals coming up, so a tricky one at home against the Devils. That'll be a tough game. Although we'll kind of have to wait and see what the Devils are without Jack Hughes. The Oilers could just be a complete coin flip. I can picture that game being absolute chaos. And then you'll hope that maybe they can pick something up against the Capitals and just try and start to put something together.
Yeah. Hey, come on, Tampa. Stop messing around.
Yeah, figure it out. Stop keeping us on edge like this.
Yeah. Now, this division's almost sort of flipped on its head, potentially for the most part. But they're the sixth team in this one now is the Florida Panthers. They're up 1 spot on 19 points. played 3 games. They beat the Golden Knights, they beat the Capitals, and lost against the Lightning. But again, I'm not inspired by this team, Matt, at all. Like, I don't know what's going on with them. Well, we know what's going on with them. They're missing the top players, but they're not doing it.
No, they're just a bit banged up, aren't they? And yes, okay, they've taken 4 points from the 6 available. Reinhardt got 5 points, Marchand got 5 points, Lundell got 4 points, but yeah, they're banged up. They look tired when they're playing. They just don't look to be playing with that same intensity as they have done the last few years. But 3 runs to the Stanley Cup final will do that, and I'm starting to think as kind of each week passes that maybe this is a year that they just have a year off, get everyone back fit and firing, and just try and go again for it next year. But yeah, they've been a really sort of tricky team this year to figure out exactly what it is that they're going to do. And I will say, just on a little side tangent, as a part of the deal that took Seth Jones to Florida last year from Chicago, with Spencer Knight going back the other way, as well as Florida's first round pick in this year's draft. I think there's a lot of Chicago fans thinking that that's going to be a really late first round pick, somewhere 28 to 32, more or less a second round pick at that point. But if this team keeps carrying on, Chicago might find themselves with a better draft pick from Florida than they were expecting.
Yeah. What a fumble that is, really, when you think about it. You got the first round pick, they got Spencer Knight, who's playing really well, and they got Seth Jones in return, and it's just, yeah. Like, out of all the teams who we expect to be doing better in this division, I think Florida is the one where I don't potentially see it turning around, because Barkov's out for the year. Tkachuk's coming back, but I don't think he's going to be the spark that's going to make this team go on a massive run. It's not like a Jack Hughes for New Jersey when he comes back in February time and scores lots of goals. He's not going to be like that, is he?
No, but I'm sure they will. I'm sure they will. They will wipe their tears with their 2 Stanley Cup rings from the last 2 years, won't they? Which, if they have an off year, they have an off year. Who cares? They got 2 cups. 2 cups to show for it in back-to-back years. So, but I do think the three-peat might be dead in the water at this point. But we'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So, going even further down, 18 points on the year, the Toronto Maple Leafs in 7th place in this division. This isn't going well for Toronto post Mitch Marner, is it?
No, and I'm kind of looking back to our pre-season kind of predictions and everything. And I remember making a comment about the fact that really, Toronto's season starts in April. They're a great regular season team, and they'll make the playoffs comfortably with no problems whatsoever. And then they can start to ramp up the intensity in April. But that's not really been the case. There is seemingly a Mitch Marner-sized kind of hole in this lineup. But you look at Toronto, sat 7th in the division, and they've got Nylander on 26 points in 16 games. They've got Tavares on 24 points in 19 games. Nyes on 22 points in 19 games. They've got 3 guys comfortably over a point per game. You then look at a team like Seattle, who are 3rd within their division, and they don't have a guy over a point per game this season at all. So, they're clearly finding the ability to score goals. And I think it's just, again, defensive lapses, poor goaltending. Obviously, Joseph Woll did come back into the lineup against Chicago. Good to see him back. I'm glad that he's been able to make a return to the team from his personal issues he was having before. So hopefully that will start to turn it around. They can get a bit more consistency in there. But yeah, they've just had some kind of slightly weak goaltending, and that's kind of costing them. But yeah, they're a really, really funny team.
Yeah, this is a team I would see. It's this team in Tampa I think will be interesting if they can recover it. I mentioned before that it's easy for a team to replicate what they've already done than it is to start something new. They've got the points, and you mentioned those 3 players, Nylander, Tavares, and Nyes, but there's Austin Matthews. Obviously, they're not obviously scoring as many as he has been previously, and he's now injured, so we'll see how long he's going to be out for. That's a big loss for them, but they have proven they can score. It is mainly defence and goaltender. They're the first team this year, and I said this when a team played their third goalkeeper, but they're the first team this year who played 4 goaltenders, between Stolarz, Primo, Hildeby, and Wall, and none of them have been really cutting it. Now, hopefully, when Wall comes back and he gets settled in more, he kicks on, and helps them on the back end there. But yeah, interesting Toronto when they're playing for
Yeah.
their lives later down the line. I think we can see some explosive, fun hockey.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm gonna sort of attempt to make to make like an NFL analogy here. So I'll let you decide sort of how well this works at the moment. But it certainly feels like with kind of certainly the Maple Leafs and the Lightning at the moment that they've snapped the ball back to the quarterback and he's kind of completely dropped it. He's fumbled it, and he's ended up kind of picking it up, but he's sort of backtracking towards his own end zone and he's kind of trying to find a way to recover it. And it all just looks a little bit messy, and he might well sort of kind of still pull out an amazing pass at the end of it, but right now they're kind of just scrambling around near their own sort of end zone and looking a bit shaky.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they're still in the middle of sort of the fumble recovery phase from it. We'll see when they actually pick their head up and turn around and see what's available to them, because they can have their front line, and to continue that analogy, they can have the first line, Nylander, Tavares, Nyes, Matthews going around, and the quarterback in that scenario might make the most perfect pass to the player at the back end, but then if their goaltender can't save it at the other side, then it's going to be all for nothing kind of thing. So it's a lot of moving parts. They've definitely got the ability to do it, and maybe they like to just challenge themselves to keep themselves entertained. I don't know, but they've definitely got the talent. They've got the parts there. It's just, can they pull it all together and pull it off?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely,
But
absolutely. Um,
but I like that
well,
analogy, Matt. Good job. I know you.
yeah, I'm really happy that you do. I was like, you know what, I'm going to try and make an NFL analogy here. I might fall flat on my face, and Nathaniel will never let me hear the end of it. But I'm going to give it a go, and I think it came through. So I'll take that. Speaking of a team that's just
Yeah.
absolutely fumbled, well, I mean, I think the Buffalo Sabres are the equivalent of half the players just haven't turned up. They're all still sat on the team bus, just kind of waiting to see what happens. And I think, again, we're going week by week with the Buffalo Sabres, where you're potentially starting to hear Tage Thompson's name start getting floated around a bit more. I don't know, but yeah, it's been a weak week for the Buffalo Sabres. 2 losses and an overtime win against the Red Wings, scraping that through. But losses to the Mammoth and the Avalanche, which, okay, they're good teams, but Buffalo are just uninspiring. They return back home to face the Oilers, the Flames, the Blackhawks, and the Hurricanes. But yeah, do you have anything on the Buffalo Sabres? Do you think that Tage Thompson is a movable piece for this team, or do you think that is sort of team suicide?
I mean, yeah, absolutely. He should not be moved, and it would be team suicide. But I wouldn't put it past the Sabres to trade him. So yes and no to that question. Um, I find it shocking that they're only 2 points behind the Maple Leafs, really. But for me, they're so far behind. It's almost like a Calgary Flames equivalent, where they're not. They're going to be finishing last in this division this year, I'd say. Um, Darlin is now returned back from his leave of his personal leave, so it'd be good for him and good for the team for him to come back and get back involved. But likewise, I mean, if you made a decision to leave, why would you come back? Just, I don't know.
Yeah, could have just stayed out in Sweden and just refused to return. But yeah, no, that'll be a boost for them. That'll be a boost, and yeah, hopefully they can, they can try and do anything. But yeah, I'm getting more nervous week by week that Gavin McKenna is going to find himself in Buffalo. God.
Well, we'd have to protest.
I think the league would. I think the league would
We'd
be
have
in
to.
protest.
I think if they do finish first, I think the lottery will somehow find a way.
Yeah, yeah.
But conspiracy theory.
Mm,
But
yeah.
for the benefit of the player and everyone involved. Who knows? In 5 years' time, McKenna might be top scoring for the Sabres, and let's see make the playoffs.
As
But
he's lifting the Stanley Cup for the
I mean,
Buffalo
I'm not.
Sabres.
Yeah. And then I'd awake from the coma.
Christ.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
What
Let's.
we'll do then, we'll cover that thought a good long sleep. Anyway, right, we'll cover off the sort of the weekly and the season stats before we sign off. I think the top scorer this week is Robertson from the Dallas Stars with 9.6 goals. I think he's rounded off fairly well with that.
Yep. Quality week from him.
Um, absolutely. Now, the most penalty minutes this week is Edvidson on 18 minutes, but joined with that is Scott Sabourin for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Yes, that same player who hasn't really played a minute of NHL hockey since the preseason, when he equally got sin bin for all high heavens for fighting the Panthers. I think they brought him up specifically for the Panthers game again. But yeah, 18 minutes in the penalty box for Sabourin. And then in terms of the season, outright top points McKinnon 33, top scorer McKinnon 14. But McDavid's following up behind on points with 30, and Draisaitl, Natchez, and Caulfield with 13 goals as well. So it's McKinnon's season so far.
Certainly is. Yeah. Certainly is. And yeah, I don't see any sign of him slowing down. I think he's on for a massive year.
Yeah. Now, the current league winner for the award of most penalty minutes, yep, that's right. It's the Washington Capitals' top scorer, Tom Wilson, with 45 minutes. 45 minutes in the penalty box already this year.
Yep, he takes it for the second week in a row. I know we've got Olivier behind him on 44, so potentially there's going to be a new champion next week. But as it stands at the moment, the penalty box perspective award for penalty minutes, Tom Wilson sat on 45 for the year.
Yeah. So, what you can look forward to then later this week from us is, I think we've already decided, we're going to refresh our power rankings. I think it's about time. I think we're looking kind of daft with some of the teams placed where they are, so I think it's time for a refresh on that. So very much looking forward to that episode. But yeah, do you want to lead us away, Matt?
Yeah, of course. So, as always, you can find us on X and Instagram at the PBP Podcast. You can also get in touch with us on Gmail at penaltyboxperspective@gmail.com. If you've got any thoughts, feelings, feedback, anything along those lines, or any comments you want to make to us as a whole, the podcast is now available in audio on YouTube as well. So please feel free to check it out there and like and subscribe and do everything that you can there. If you are listening on the Good Old Fashioned Podcast, if you want to give us a 5-star review, that'd be sincerely appreciated on our part. It really helps push us up into the algorithm a little bit more, helps more people find us, and as always, thanks for being here with us, and don't forget to join us later this week for our power rankings refresh. But as always, guys, thanks for being with us on the ride.
And take care. I'll see you next time. Bye.